Hi, This is Yeet, and my friends keep yelling at me because I keep skateboarding too hard in the main lobby without actually playing the game. This is Fighting, a 5v5 class-based fighting game all made on the popular engine everyone loves and hates, Roblox. Of all the Roblox games I've played, this is one of my favorites, up there with Blox Fruits and Heroes Battlegrounds, but you can flame me on those choices later. The best way I can describe this game is by calling it Splatoon, Overwatch, Marvel Rivals. Splatwatch Rivals. The lobby, known as the Crossroads, is the main area where you learn the game for the first time. You learn about the class system and how many characters exist. Around the lobby are NPCs that you can interact with, but they are mainly NPCs that give you skins. A few non-skin NPCs that are interacted with quite a bit are the Settings NPC Setoing, the Titled NPC Traffic, the Statistics NPC Ghostiri, and the Dono NPC The Broker. Each character is equipped with a primary, secondary, 2 abilities, an ultimate, and a passive ability. The melee class oftentimes has at least one ability that's based on positioning and movement. The range class usually always has some sort of spacing gimmick, and the sport class is 4/5 sealers. Yeah, I'm looking at you. Subspace. What are you gonna do about it? Kill me? My knowledge on the gameplay styles for these characters is extremely limited, outside of like a few characters, so bear with me here. Sword is your standard melee character. His primary is nothing more than just his sword. His secondary is your average boomerang, except it casually phases through people. His Q ability is just if you put Smash Bros. Link in the game and call it a day. His E ability is exactly like saying you've had enough and jumping at your opponent and stabbing him. His ultimate is something completely different from something you'd expect out of your first character. You chuck your sword into a cluster of enemies and pray that they all get hit by the explosion it makes. His passive just kind of makes his attacks more powerful the more hits he takes and the more hits he lands. Skateboard. Biograph is a weird character, since it's just casually a squishy robot and an Enderman. His passive and his primary go hand in hand, making his attacks just decide to press the turbo button for some reason, and then explode when he feels he's ready to be done overheating. His secondary is just your average long-lasting projectile that does very little damage and is generally kind of small. His Q ability makes him just become the Enderman and make it so that anyone below 25% max health with only 10 shield just dies on the spot. His E ability is your standard Tracer Overwatch bully where you just zoom forward. His ultimate cranks the Psycho mode I talked about earlier just straight up to 11, being able to use that overheating speed to massacre enemies that are just by themselves and die faster than normal in a crowd. Just make sure you don't kill yourself in the process. Katana's entire gameplay is supposed to be your normal tank gameplay, even though it just isn't. His passive makes it so that if you get hit by his primary 5 times, you just die in front of him. Even if you're not in front of him, like say above him, he doesn't care. His secondary mainly allows for his passive to be used as a really good poke tool, since it uses whatever of his passive is stuck to you instead of the usual 5 needed for it. He also has a grapple that, instead of working like a normal grapple, brings the enemy to you so you can passive the balls off your opponent. His E ability is just that one reflecting move that Genji has, so at least he has a decently tame ability. His ultimate isn't, however, making all his enemies take full effect of his passive, allowing him to do massive damage even if you're trying to run. Banhammer. I would say stuff about this character, but I know Rowdy would get mad at me for even trying to interpret him, so I'll just say you're either really into this character due to this guy's lore, or you have an astronomical beef with Scythe players. You also like pretending you're a judge in a Phoenix Wright game. Rocket. Yeah, no, you just like being that one dude with a boomstick, or you like the idea of being crippled and having a dad with no arm. Slingshot is the type of character a ton of people have beef with, but they're generally easy to deal with, unless they're good at slang. You also just, for whatever reason, have the permission from God to walk on evaporated water, hitting people from almost across the battlefield like you're John Wick. Your secondary is just a strong version of your primary, while the rest of your abilities are movement-based. The ultimate Slingshot is just getting a 3-time use of the rocks that killed Goliath. Hyper Laser. You really like playing Hitman and watching 360 no-scope headshot Fortnite clips on your free time. In full seriousness, he's the only fighter in the range class that's not completely movement-based. Hyper Laser's ult is arguably the best in the game. A 3-time use of an instant kill no matter what health you're at. Luckily, the 3-time use only works if you can connect the first 2 shots. Shuriken players most likely play Genji if they've ever played Overwatch, since his passive makes him essentially a movement king of sorts. His Q ability makes his traversal power extremely annoying, since you'll be hunting him down, then the next moment, they're clinging to a wall halfway across the map. His E ability is quite literally just if Naruto's Shadow Clone Jutsu smoke actually hurt people. His ultimate is just used for stopping your opponent from healing, especially if they don't have a support on their team nearby. Shuriken second players are probably also freaky, since most damage you do is from behind. Scythe's gameplay mainly consists of do some damage to the person in your passive by sidestepping with the scythe, then, when you get low, screw off and mag them from far away. After that, the result screen will say you've gone 11, 0, and 7 because you're just far too annoying when it comes to schmovement. Her normal Q ability makes it so that you can just hit people with the anime special of air slashes using bullets you have. With her E ability, she can just say she ain't done with you and hunt you down for sport. The Scythe ultimate is a very versatile ultimate since it can be used defensively and offensively as it makes you invisible and really fast. Her rifle E ability is just weaker version of Hyper Laser's normal primary attack, while her Q ability is her having a short range shotgun. Her rifle ultimate is more or less just funny spinny move with good lateral range but bad horizontal range. Scythe players also find Banhammer's kill food from long range. Medkit's abilities down to his passive is completely built around being a healer. His abilities force him to be around other players since he doesn't really have any shield, but he makes up for it with the fact that he has 300 HP and a trigger finger for a secondary, making his 6-shooter look a lot like a machine gun. His Q ability allows him to teleport and heal you and your ally, making his kit extremely safe to use. His B ability is a weird ability, since it isn't a lasting ability, but it's a really good ability nonetheless. His ultimate, Divine Resurrection, is one of the best ultimates in the game. For Conquer, that is. You also have a crippling obsession with Medcarrot. Don't lie to me. Boombox used to be the worst support in the game, but after the rework, he's way better. Boombox players are the type of players now that want to be a really good support, as he passed Subspace, Coil, and Vinestaff in the rankings of being a support class. Of course, Boombox main veterans would say otherwise, telling me that he's been the best support class fighter, in which I respond, have you taken your meds yet? I don't know enough on BB to know how he works, so just look up a BB guide or something, I don't know. Subspace has the best ultimate for the Conquer game mode, as it is the greatest at area denial. I've been hit by the ultimate so many times, it's created PTSD every time I even see it within my peripheral vision. His Q ability creates a sort of translucent domain expansion where it's just filled with mustard gas, making opponents slow and more vulnerable, essentially the equivalent to being a man in a wheelchair trying to go up a flight of stairs. His secondary, however, has the same sort of behavior that crushes cars. Imagine you're in a skydiving simulator and then mid-air they just reverse the fan. The main issue with this character is that outside of needing a support fighter near you is that the only way to heal yourself is to commit homicide. Vinestaff is probably the most beginner safe of all the support fighters. You're essentially the big sister to most of the teams since you'll be sitting in the back most of the time while trying to avoid getting slapped in the face with either lasers or sharp objects. Her primary is essentially the equivalent to that of an AK-47, just not as deadly, while you throw out seeds like you're gardening the battlefield. Luckily, pretty much all of Vinestaff's abilities heal in some way. Her ultimate is the complete opposite to activating Malevolent Shrine, by healing instead of mass chopping people into pieces like your Gordon Ramsay. Alright, get ready for Yapatron 5000. Coil is the fighter where some dude named Jim became obsessed with the coil powers of Roblox and decided to turn it into a character. Coil is arguably the most complex character in the game, just because of one button. R. It's not even close. Gravity allows him to use an uppercut secondary that launches opponents into the air as if you're trying to be Ryu in a 3D Street Fighter game. His E ability allows him to quickly reach the floor if it doesn't connect, but when it does, you can start bouncing on them like they're a trampoline for a total of 2 times. Speed's primary attack becomes way faster and his secondary is a lunging punch now. It just does way less damage. His E ability now makes him just casually go anywhere within 30 studs. Yes, I tested it. Regeneration makes him heal himself over time. His primary goes back to being the same speed as Gravity's primary except weaker, and his secondary becomes a short-ranged projectile. Why did I say projectiles on that? What was I on? It's one projectile. Why did I say it's plural? His E ability then becomes a one-sided shield that converts damage into healing. His Q ability universally adds the effect of the coil he's on to his allies that are tethered to him. His ultimate, Fusion Coil, uses all the aforementioned effects of the 3 previous modes and makes him an offensive machine. His primary is as fast as his gravity primary, but as a projectile. His secondary becomes a long wind-up. Why did I put an E at the end of line? The secondary becomes a long wind-up projectile, and the Q ability becomes a launching move that does a little more damage, and the E ability is a slamming ability that does AoE damage. The closer, the more damage. Oh my goodness. 84 voiceovers just to finish this one section. Why? When joining the game for the first time, you are greeted with the tutorial. Most will end up clicking through it, but I suggest actually reading it as it will be extremely helpful for new players. Once you find a character that you think you want to learn, you will look up guides because your lazy self does not feel like learning them from scratch. Once you learn the character you want to play, go over to Rocket's one-armed dad and get ready to have your day ruined by a 5-year-old. The 2 main game modes you will find while playing are Conquer and Annihilate. Conquer is quite literally your average capture the point like Splat Zones and Marvel Rivals Domination, and Overwatch's Control. Annihilate is just get enough kills to win. There are technically 2 more game modes, but you rarely ever see them. The 2 game modes I'm talking about are Escort and Boomball. Escort is your average payload game modes, like Tower Control, Overwatch's Payload, and Marvel Rivals Convoy. Boomball is just Rocket League if you put a bunch of boomboxes in an arena. A lot of stuff on the actual Fighting Wiki website is mainly the lore stuff, so I suggest you go read that up yourself. The most lore that I have on a character is Scythe. To shorten it down for people who don't know, she's considered a psycho, murderous, cultist cripple woman. The cripple part I just made up, but she does have a prosthetic arm. The actual thing about the cult bit is just Christianity, from what I'm understanding reading the wiki. Or it's Mormons, but I could be wrong. The only reason it's considered a cult is because the entire fighting society is thinking it's just Satanism. One of my favorite things about the lore being relevant in this game is the fact that you can get really funny interactions between characters. My 2 favorite interactions are both between Skateboard and Coil.
Dude, listen up. I got a genius idea for an invention you can make.
For the last time, I'm not strapping jet boosters to your board.
Not even a tiny one?
I'm about to go beast mode.
I did not just hear you call it beast mode.
Because you can't go beast mode.
You know I could hear you, right?
Though I'm only level 37 as of making this video, the endgame is really simple to explain. You've somehow gotten every title, somehow gotten every skin, you've learned how to play every character, and you've reached a really high level count. There's not much more to say about it, so it kind of leaves you with just 2 options. Teach your friends how to play this game even though they refuse 5 out of the 7 times you ask, or B, leave the game alone until another update comes out. Now for the very point of this video. What do I think about this game? Like I mentioned already, this is one of my favorite games. I really like that this game does its own sort of thing for the hero shooter genre by taking a bunch of aspects from other games that are really tiny and adding their own dumb gimmicks. Something that amazes me every time I think about it is that this pretty much was just made by a total of about 4 or 5 people, and it looks really good with like very little monetization outside of like a few UGC items and this little goober. It's kind of sad that it's still in alpha because it just doesn't feel like it is. It feels like a ready to be published game. I just can't wait for like freaking console compatibility so I can play with every one of my friends and just screw around in a private server. All that being said, send your love to the fighting devs and play this phenomenon of a game. Anyways, subscribe, follow my Twitch, and or else you get
sentenced to forever broccoli no candy. Go f yourself.